Welcome everyone to PFA's webinar, Back at Work. As a manager or an employee representative, what do you need to be aware of when it comes to mental health coming back to the workplace? We've looked very much forward to welcoming you here today, and with me I have Vibeke Lunding Gregersen, who is an authorized psychologist and also CEO of Mindwork. And my name is Jesper Steensen, and I'm director of PFA's corporate customers. I think many of us are looking forward to the gradual reopening of the Danish society and workplaces, and that more and more of us can return to the offices. At PFA, we would like to make our contribution into securing that this will be a good and safe and effective return for everyone, and to make sure that it becomes a positive experience. Vibeke will guide us through what you as a manager can do and what you should be mindful of when it comes to mental well-being when people start returning to the workplace. Vibeke will take us through a number of slides, and we will have time for questions in the end. Vibeke's presentation will run until approximately 10:20, and then we will have time for questions before we round off at 10:30. Just a few practical remarks before we get started. At the top right corner, you can see an engagement bar where you can ask a question. Just click on the tab Questions and write your question, and please do so during the presentation. And then, as I said before, we will sum up towards the end and ask the questions. You can also put the video player into full screen view. That will make it easier for you to see the details on the slide that Vibeke will show you. You can do this by moving the cursor towards the bottom right-hand corner of the video player, and that will bring the screen into full screen mode. And just simply press Escape to get to exit the full screen. We will be recording the webinar, and we'll send you a link of the recording afterwards if you would like to share it with colleagues or others. And it will also be through this link that you can download Vibeke's slides from today. And now, Vibeke, over to you.
Thank you, Jesper. Thank you. And thank you to PFA for arranging this. I'm just going to move into the center of the screen here. And then welcome to all of you. Now, today is about humans, about our emotions, reactions, and behaviors. And hence, insight into the human brain and nature is a good starting point, and it will be the foundation for today's webinar. We will start with a short guided trip into the human brain. Then we will look at pandemic stress and risk factors, after which, based on compassion and psychological safety, we will look at how we can prevent and create a framework that supports well-being, performance, and collaboration when we return to the workplace. It's a very special situation we are in right now. While positive news about highly effective vaccines gives us new hope, it doesn't change the fact that a lot of people are struggling, and that may be the case for many months to come. In crisis psychology, we talk about three key issues that define the impact a crisis can have on our mental health. These are the nature of the crisis, the duration of the crisis, and the risk of reoccurrence. And here, Corona is a pretty strong candidate. Researchers have studied the Danish population during the pandemic, and their studies show that our well-being is significantly reduced compared to before. Studies show large increases in loneliness, and Danes in general score higher on anxiety and depression compared with measurements before the pandemic. And many of the leaders that we talk to and organizations that we talk to, they report that they start seeing increases in sick days. Looking back at the year that has passed, we started out by seeing a lot of energy and creativity. We were together, even though we were apart. And despite worry and uncertainty, solutions were found and acted upon. Over the summer and the fall, the situation became somewhat normalized. We got used to a new everyday life, and most of us probably thought that the worst was almost over. But then the second wave hit, the second lockdown, and different mutations appeared, sending us right back to where we started. There's in many ways light at the end of the tunnel, but it can feel a bit like running a marathon where the finish line keeps on moving out of sight as we appear. So now we are experiences what in crisis psychology can be termed battle fatigue or corona fatigue. Of course, it's not all bad. There has been tremendous learning. Many have gained new perspectives on life and have experienced meaningfulness and purpose. And of course, we must believe and hope that we will get through the pandemic, because we will. That is what humans do. We face great challenge and crisis, but we get through them and we will rise again. But there's an important task in terms of preventing and alleviating, because our mental health is under enormous pressure and it's going to place great demand on organizations in the time to come. So let's take a look at the human brain. Now, the human brain is a paradox. It's amazing, but it's also a challenge. And it's our common human starting point, no matter who we are. Whether we are managers or employees, male or female, from Asia or Europe, whether we are director, engineer, or carpenter, we have the brain in common. The human brain is not something to be explained in a minute, and I could talk for the things I'm presenting for you now for days or hours, but it's just going to take a few minutes because we're going to cut to the chase. What we modern people need to remind ourselves and each other of is actually quite simple. The human brain is amazing, it's marvelous, but it is most of all a terrible mess. Now, the brain consists of parts that are at least 120 million years old and originate from animals. This is what we call the old brain, which primarily focuses on survival and reproduction, on food, sex, and power, on fight, flight, status, and dominance. The old brain has been optimized and developed over 117-18 million years. And then the last couple of years, that is the last couple of million years, we developed the new brain, the special human part of the brain, the part that made us intelligent and that we only have in common with ourselves. It's the new brain that has given us our special abilities for imagination, for planning, analysis, and interpretation, for creativity and innovation. But it is also the new brain that can make us worry, be self-critical in a very special human way that is totally different from what animals can do. There are no dogs, cats, or other animals that lie sleepless due to COVID-19, whether it is a threat to them or not. Now, in order to fully understand how our brain can challenge us, let's take a look at the brain's control center, which is made up of 3 emotional regulation systems. This is where the brain is able to regulate our state, how we feel, and consequently our behavior, what we do. While we take this brief tour into the control center, you might try and think about what emotions or reactions you have experienced the last 2-3 months. So during this second wave. Now, first we have the red system, our threat system. Now, this system is designed for the sole purpose of making sure that the threats we meet do not kill us, and thereby making us evolutionary redundant. The threat system activates strong negative emotions like fear, anger, and disgust, and it's the strongest of the 3 systems. The red system is our alarm system, or better safe than sorry system, making sure that we react fast and instinctively. Or as evolutionary psychologists would put it, you can have lunch many, many times in life, but you can only be lunch once. That's the essence of the threat system. Survival comes first, the rest can wait. The drive system, the blue system, guides, motivates, and encourages animals and humans to desire, pursue, and perform. The blue system ensures that we stay on the lookout for opportunities, that we take some chances, that we move forward and constantly progress. The blue system activates strong positive emotions like joy and excitement to stimulate behavior which sets the pace a bit, adds a bit of pressure on us, and makes us perform in order to reach our goals. All living creatures, all animals, have a version of a drive and a threat system. It's necessary for survival. But the soothing system, the green system, we only share with mammals. The green system ensures that we can find peace, safeness, and contentment as a counterweight to the fight, flight, and pursuit of the two other systems. The green system is also about contact and attachment between humans, and it's essential for our survival. We are social animals, dependent on our flock, and our children are completely dependent on receiving care and protection in order to survive. When the green system is activated, we can be content for a while and be satisfied with the state of things. And for humankind, the soothing system is crucial because the calmness it contains keeps the old primitive brain in check, connects the new rational human brain, and gives us a wider option of thoughts and considerations. Now, there is no good or bad systems in the brain, no right or wrong systems. We need them all, each for its own purpose. The keyword is balance. But for many, even a completely ordinary day offers imbalance in these three systems. And when we then add a global crisis, it does not get any easier. All three systems are affected. It may look very different depending on who you are, but we are all affected by the situation. Our threat system is on high alert. There's a concrete threat to our health, and with new mutations, worries are once again increasing. We can all be affected by COVID-19. We can have relatives who may be affected or are high risk. Add to this all the things we as a society do to gain control of this situation. The lockdown of Denmark and the world with all the consequences that follows. Most of us experience uncertainty, worries, and perhaps frustration during these times. It's all signs of an active threat system. A threat-activated blue system can put pressure on the urge to cope, fix, and to succeed in some people. We prioritize, we act, and find solutions. But with the long duration of the crisis, it can be difficult to access the motivation. In addition, many will find that their blue system is inhibited because there are things that we cannot or must not do. Many of the activities that can provide energy and joy are not available. And at the same time, we are now also in a situation where we are prevented from doing the things that would normally help to calm our threat system. For instance, to be in contact with other people. In other words, what would normally activate our green system is not available, and that can increase the threat activation, especially in those who are alone and during this time have limited contact with other people. In crisis, our need for safeness, closeness, and contact with others is great, and this is really difficult to accommodate in the crisis that we are still in the middle of. Now, let's try and have a look at how you experience this. I'm going to need your help now. In the chat, there should be a link that you can activate. If you activate the link, you will be sent to a website called Polls Everywhere. On this website, you can write the emotions and reactions that you have experienced over the last 2-3 months, during this second wave. Now, when you do that, we will be able to see the things that you are writing on the slide on the screen now. And it will give us a sense of our common state, a sense of how many different reactions and emotions that we can experience in times of crisis. I'm just going to give this a little time, and then hopefully we will be able to see some of the things that you are writing here. Now, the first one that is coming up here is frustration. Now, the way this works is that the more people who write the same words, the stronger the word will be on the screen, and it will give us a sense of both the many different reactions, but also maybe the most common reactions that we can see. And I see worries, hopelessness, anger, exhaustion, isolation, anxiety, calm. Someone wrote calm also. Energy, trapped and isolated, stress and anger, insecurity, helplessness. So as we can see here now is that there is a lot of more negative reactions and feelings. And the interesting thing here is when we sort of look at the time that have passed, in my experience, I have been doing this exercise with many different people since the first lockdown, is how there has been an increase in negative emotions and reactions, which is also what we see on the slide in front of us right now. So, you know, there's someone is writing hope as well. Okay, so I'm just going to thank you all very much for your participation, for your willingness to share. We will save this slide so you will be able to look at it afterwards. Thank you so much. Now I will slowly move on, but to see this one. Now see how maybe we can also understand the shift that has been during this second wave. Now, as already mentioned, during the first wave, we saw an increased activation in both threat and drive systems, less in the green system. But during this second wave, we see that not only the green, but also the blue system is getting less activated. And it's this imbalance that characterizes corona fatigue or battle fatigue in many, and which can develop and lead to mental health problems in some. One of the key things in this crisis is how different our situations are, even though we are in this together. Now, in this model on the screen now, our threat system is represented in the red circle and our drive and soothing systems in the blue and green circle in the middle. And then on one hand, we can have very different workload, and on the other hand, different degrees of social stimulation. Before Corona, most experienced, and sometimes we have experienced high workload. But for most part, we will bounce back, which is important because too much work pressure for too long will increase the risk of stress. Most of us have probably also experienced being socially or relational overstimulated from time to time. Now, a good long Christmas holiday with the whole extended family can be a tad demanding on most, but fortunately also Christmas has an end. We can also have periods with low work pressure. We can have lack of challenges and variation in our work. This can affect motivation and be stressful if it drags on. And finally, we can have periods in our life when our social life is not what we would like it to be, placing us out here on the far right. Now, in an ordinary life, day where we are reasonable balanced. We will predominantly be in the inner blue-green circle with small detours into the red where there is threat activation. During Corona, however, more and more people have found themselves in the red circle, and very important, we have been here for a very long time. The model here gives us a cue to where the individual employees might be, but also how we, despite completely different conditions, can all be burdened. Up here on the top left, we have employees who have had high work pressure and have been working from home with family and maybe children who have needed attention. This can create high pressure and relational overstimulation. Now, down here in the low right corner, we have employees who might have been sent home and isolated, where both loneliness, lack of work, and perhaps job insecurity can be stressful. Now, the point here is that both high and low workload, over and under social stimulation, can actually create an imbalance in the emotion regulating systems and can increase the risk of stress. This model can also be used to create a mutual understanding of each other's reactions, even though our situations are very different. Good. Now, let's have a closer look at what symptoms and reactions we might expect. The most common responses to pandemic stress are the feeling of loneliness and reduced quality of life. Worry and anxiety can increase. We may experience lack of energy and sadness. When we are out of balance, many will also feel inadequate. Feeling disillusioned is a common and expected response to a crisis that changes our lives. This feeling can hold us to the experience that the pandemic has profound and negative consequences for our reality and thus affect both motivation and mental well-being and energy. When we are under pressure, it also affects our behavior in different ways. And you can see some examples in the column to the right. The good thing here is that this means that we can observe the imbalance in ourselves and in others if we just pay attention. So this can be something like social withdrawal. This is when we are suddenly not present online. We withdraw from joint activities. We can also get really busy but not get anything done. Maybe we start forgetting appointments and find it difficult to concentrate. This is where we are unable to sit still, listen, and be present. It is interruptions. We have no time or patience to listen to other people talk. And then there are these emails without introduction. This is where the first email looked like number 17 in a chat. No hello, no dear, or other way of greeting you. Just straight to the point. If you're really lucky, you will get an auto signature at the end of the email. And the fuse may be short. Conflict, race, and in and out groups start forming, providing fertile ground for power struggles and internal competition. As you can see, it's not necessarily very pretty or constructive, but it's very human. It's one of the things that can happen when we are under pressure. No matter the situation we're in, what conditions we live under, we will be vulnerable to the experience of symptoms of pandemic stress. And this can have major impact and consequences on our workplaces and our work environments. Now, in Danish workplaces, we have a responsibility to ensure healthy conditions for all employees. And this means that we must prevent and manage stress, and we must ensure both a good physical and psychological work environment. As leaders and representatives, you have an important role. So now we're going to just have a look at some of these risk factors and get an idea as to what we can do to support and help each other. To the left, you find a list of risk factors. and to the right, the things we can do to help. Now, if we are stressed and our threat system is activated, there will often quickly be an imbalance between the demands on us on one hand and the resources we have to solve the tasks on the other. When that happens, we may need help to prioritize tasks or to get support from others. Another factor is about this so-called boundaryless work, which has been accelerating with the speedy technological development in recent years. But during Corona, the workplace for many has completely melded together with our private life as our workstations have moved into our living rooms. We might need help to ensure a fixed structure for the workday. It can also be helpful to clearly mark the shifts between work and private time, make physical shifts if possible, or mark the shift with a transition activity. It can be something as simple as taking a walk. And this is really, really important because we need to take time off. We need to take breaks for our well-being, but also for our brains to function. Remember that you as leaders are role model here, and you need to take care of this for yourself as well. Another thing we need to be aware of is the quite understandable temptation to try to catch up for lost time. And that is both in our private lives, but it is also in our professional life and in our social lives. It can be really tempting also for you as leaders to just sort of hit the accelerator, both in regards to tasks and other activities. But it's really, really important to remember the balance and maybe slow down a bit. When something is important, it's often a really good idea to hurry slowly so that we get things done right. If we just speed away from day one, we risk that our engines burn out. And that leads to the next point. Many have become accustomed to living under very different circumstances the last year. We have had limited social interactions. We have been working without disruptions from large office spaces. And we have also, in many cases, have limited or very different contact to customers or other people that we need to work with. We have in many ways been hibernating, and this has an impact on our brain and our nervous system. Some will therefore experience being more sensitive to noise and being overwhelmed faster or being overstimulated in social contexts. Therefore, we might need to think about gradually rehabilitating our nervous system, both in our private and professional lives. Now, you should think of this as actually the same as if you had just recovered from a broken leg and you wanted to start running again. Now, you wouldn't start by running a marathon, and that's the same principle that you are going to apply in this context. Now, all these factors can contribute to imbalance in the emotion regulation systems. And when that happens, there is always a risk of the old brain entering the stage. And one of our oldest survival strategies is to quickly assess who is with us and who could be against us. This raises the risk of conflicts. Now, in some workplaces, there have been a very large difference in workload, with some having been really busy and others may have been sent home. This can give rise to groupings. It can also be about how we individually cope. If you are among those who have done really well and you just yearn to get back at work and normal life, you may not want to hear anymore about how tough this has been for others. And then you might be drawn to colleagues who feel like you do. There may be groups of employees who take rules and regulations and guidelines really serious, and others who start to let go. This can also trigger strong reactions. Now, all this is really quite understandable. people react different to this crisis. But when we form in and out groups in our workplaces, there's a risk of bullying and harassment. What we can do here is to try and listen to the language in the organization, the way we talk or write about each other. Are there signs of beginning exclusion of certain colleagues or groups of colleagues? Or do you see old conflicts between teams or departments beginning to flare up? If conflict arises, the worst thing we can do is to leave them be and think that they will go away by themselves. They rarely do. We have to take responsibility for the conflict. We have to help to resolve them. And finally, we must remember that we cannot always eliminate risk factors in a time of crisis, but we can increase the protective factors. And one of the things that really protect us humans is good relationships, healthy connections in the workplace. Okay, and this brings us to this slide. Now, Corona has made it clear for many leaders that relationships, caring, and empathy are essential for a healthy and sustainable business during, but also after the pandemic. And this is where compassion comes into the picture. Compassion is rooted deep in human nature, but it's not something that has been given much attention in modern society before the pandemic. And that's a shame, because studies show that compassionate leaders can really make a difference. And I'm sure many of you have experienced this during Corona. One reason for this is that compassion is the foundation for psychological safety. Research has shown that leaders who show compassion are perceived as stronger and more competent leaders. It has direct influence on the commitment of the employees and their willingness to follow their leader. It creates better relationships between employees and forms the basis for cooperation and trust. And not only that, we actually have data showing that leaders who show compassion has lower staff turnover and greater loyalty from customers. To get a sense of what compassion is, we're now just going to do a small experiment. Now I'm going to ask you to sit back and close your eyes for just 10 seconds. Close your eyes and think about the most important thing in your life. Think about what's most important to you in your life. Now you can open your eyes again. Now, as a psychologist, people often ask me if I can read their mind. And of course I can't. But today I'm going to give it a try anyway. Now I'm going to begin by guessing some of the things that you did not think of. For instance, your targets for this quarter, the company's financial report, your salary or maybe bonus this year. And I'm pretty sure that even though PFA is our host today, you did not think about your pension. I know that you thought of one or more of the people that matters most to you in your life. So see, I told you that I could read your mind. And that is what compassion is all about. Compassion is about healthy connections between humans. And there's actually a deep wisdom in this, because healthy connections predict both our physical and mental health. Everything from blood pressure, depression, to how long we live is positively influenced by healthy connections. And it's compassion and healthy connections that has brought humans to where we are today. For the most valuable principle of evolution is our ability to connect and care for one another. We are not here because we are the biggest or the strongest. There are far bigger, far stronger, and far more robust animals than us in the world. At birth, humans are without comparison the most incomplete and most helpless of animals. Our children are the ones with the greatest need for love and caring commitment. But actually, that became our greatest evolutionary advantage. It is care and commitment which became the key to our large human brain and therefore to our success. Because in order for our offspring to survive, we have had to develop a very large brain that contains precisely the neural systems needed to create motivation and desire to take care of other people. Without care and attachment between humans, without compassion, we would not have survived. And then, what is compassion actually? Other than a human characteristic that is related to attachment and healthy connections between people. Some people think of words such as warmth, care, kindness, and empathy, tolerance, and understanding, while others think of negative words such as compassion being a weakness, something to do with pity or self-absorption or softness. But obviously, that is not what I mean when I talk about compassion. And sometimes it can be helpful to sort of put a face to it. So I'm going to need your help again. If you go back to the link from before, go into the website, and then write which famous people you associate with the word compassion. They can be alive or dead, it doesn't matter. Just which famous people do you associate with the word compassion? Now, I can tell you that I have been doing this exercise with thousands of people in the last couple of years. And I have this top 3, 5. We always get that. So now it's up to you. I just activated your blue system. So what are the famous people you associate with the word compassion? We have Mandela. We have Mother Teresa, Obama. I thought I saw Gandhi. Did I see Gandhi? Diana. I'm just going to let this go for a bit longer to see what else you come up with. Okay. Now, see, I can tell you that you actually already did make a top 3, 5. Let me show you what I have here. Now I have Nelson Mandela, Gandhi. I have Mother Teresa, Dalai Lama, Martin Luther King, Barack Obama, Diana, and then, of course, Jesus. Now, I don't imagine that any of you would describe these people as weak, self-absorbed, or passive, but we might agree that they have all had wisdom, courage, strength, and they have cared for other people and their well-being. And if we look closer at the corona crisis, we can ask ourselves which words we would use to describe those who have been at the front line of the crisis. Those who, at considerable risk of becoming infected themselves, have taken care of the rest of us. And which words would you, regardless of political standing or personal preferences, use to describe the leaders who have had to make difficult decisions for our country, our workplaces, and our lives during this pandemic? Decisions that have basically been about caring for people's lives and looking after each other. That is what compassion is all about. Compassion is about having well-being at heart, well-being for yourself and others. This also means that compassion is about noticing when yourself or others are not well and actually do something about it. This is why compassion is about courage, about having the courage to take a step forward when we face challenges in ourselves and each other, to make the choice to turn to and relate to the challenge instead of turning away. And to do this, we need caring. So compassion is about caring, commitment, and connections. Compassion is based on our ability to care for each other. That is what has ensured our survival, and the reason why healthy connections is the foundation for both well-being and performance. If we are to contribute to sustainable solutions, if we have well-being at heart, we need to be committed and engaged. Hence, compassion is about wisdom and insight into the human brain, human nature, and the importance of healthy connections is precisely that, sources of great wisdom. And finally, compassion is about strength, the strength to relieve and prevent, the strength to do the necessary things, even when it means setting boundaries and speaking out, because that's compassion too. Compassion is not about what you do. Compassion is about how and why you do what you do. When the goal of our actions is to be helpful, and when you act because you have well-being at heart, you act with compassion. Now, let's turn again to the current situation we are in. From a psychological perspective, reopening can be complicated. When we will be experiencing this differently, and no reactions are truer than others. It is just as all right to be uneasy about the opening as it is to rejoice and feel relief. The task in the workplace will be to accommodate this diversity, to talk about it so that we can prevent mistrust and stress. It's about showing compassion and creating psychological safety. If we are to deal with situations of increased stress, we need to create an atmosphere of safety for everyone. And science actually shows that safety is also what best predicts performance. Amy Edmondson is a professor from Harvard Business School. She received an international award in 2019 for the most innovative idea in management based on her research into psychological safety. According to Amy Edmondson, psychological safety is a shared belief that it is safe to be oneself and take interpersonal risks in your workplace. It is knowing that you can speak your mind, have concerns, ask questions, make suggestions, or talk about mistakes without being punished or humiliated. When we open again, many organizations need to start a reboarding of their employees. And here, compassion and psychological safety will be crucial for a good process and return. We must focus on both the individual and the group if we want to prevent stress in the best possible way when we return. As a workplace, we must ensure both the physical environment, for instance, the risk of infection, and the psychological environment, by ensuring community and safety. That is how we can best protect each other when we come back. In the process of reboarding, communication and a clear framework is of great importance, just as it has been all along the way. So make sure you as leaders formulate a clear and simple framework for return. A framework that of course includes employees' experiences with new ways of working. For example, what are the requirements for being at the office? If you still have people working from home, then who can show up, when and why? And what are the precautions taken in regards to eliminating or minimizing the risk of infection? If we don't have a clear and simple decisions and clear communications, we create uncertainty, and that can activate feelings of threat. Now, employees have certain needs when they return, and we need to explore and listen to them. We need to make sure everyone is seen and heard in this process. It may be about the fact that we have new ways of working, new routines and habits, but it can also be about how we feel and about whether returning creates concerns. It's not enough to just welcome people back and ask them how they are, or to assume that they will speak up uninvited. We will have to be more explorative. We will have to listen and ask more questions. When we have investigated the individual's needs and the framework is in place, we can start aligning expectations. We might have to consider the workload for a time, the possibility of working from home, or talk about which tasks and projects the employees should have at this time. Aligning expectations is key. It is mentally demanding to be human right now, and this means that in order to prevent actual breakdowns, we might have to adjust expectations to ourselves and one another for a period of time. If we don't talk about or are willing to look at the expectations of the individuals or the individual employee based on their situations, it can reinforce the feeling of inadequacy, and it can contribute to the development of stress. We must keep in mind that no one wakes up in the morning with a desire not to do a good job. But for many, it has been the feeling of not being able to deliver as they used to, and it can create stress. And then no matter what we do to prevent and protect, sometimes there will be a need for more. So make sure you know your options, the possibilities you have to offer extra help and support. It can be insurance, it can be medical referrals. You might have some form of mindfulness or compassion training within your organization, or you might have the possibility to offer coaching. Now let's have a look at the group level. As we already covered, safety and being connected to other people are of essence and can normally protect us. But our feeling of community and belonging has been under pressure the last year. When we return, there is a major task in restoring social relations and community in the workplace. The first step is to get everyone involved and create a space for many different experiences, feelings, and reactions that lives among our employees. As a leader and workplace, it's important to signal that it is actually okay not to be okay, and we can handle and accommodate each other's differences. And let's be clear, this is not about group therapy at the workplace, but it's about a structured process where everyone is heard, where we have each other's well-being at heart, and where we support healthy connections and thus psychological safety in our work environment. Compassion and psychological safety are key to this process. So let's look at a few of Amy Edmondson's suggestions on how to create psychological safety. As leaders, you must take the lead. You must set the stage by using yourself, sharing examples, and normalizing reactions. Right now, it's tough for many, but if we don't talk about it, and we are often tend not to, perhaps on the assumption that it will make it worse or that it is useless because we can't do anything about it. The problem is that it can leave us with the experience of being left alone with the difficulty, and that you're the only one feeling like this. And that won't make it any easier. That's why we need to listen and share experiences. It creates a sense of normalcy that makes it possible to ask questions and ask for help. It can contribute to a strong sense of community in which we look after each other and have the opportunity to offer support and to ensure well-being. Inviting participation is basically about being curious and asking questions. In this situation where we have to slowly get back to work, it's important to create a space where everyone is invited in. When we create psychological safety, we have a working environment where people dare to participate, dare to raise concerns, dare to speak their mind and be themselves. We can start by asking questions in the group that will allow everyone to participate at a level that they are comfortable with. Make sure that everyone has the possibility to be heard, and remember that it is first and foremost about listening and understanding the different experiences. This is not about having to solve and fix problems. The quickest way to shut down a conversation is to neglect the experience. For example, if an employee struggles working from home, it's not very helpful to be told what a great opportunity it is. And if you are afraid of being infected, it doesn't help to be told that it is no worse than getting the flu. It can be really difficult not to get into solution mode. And therefore, it's important that the process is guided by someone who can stay calm and facilitate the conversation in the group. And let me just say that it is perfectly normal if you as a leader feel unfamiliar with this sort of processes, and if you would prefer to get help facilitating it. Maybe your HR organization or others in your workplace can help you facilitate the process. Now, just as these interventions are an important part of reboarding the employees, it's also important to think about the leaders and their well-being as part of the process. It has been a difficult time for everyone. And we know from surveys during Corona that leaders are among those who have worked the most and been feeling most pressured. As leaders, you have a particular difficult task. You yourselves are in this situation, which can affect us very differently depending on who we are and where we are in our lives. But in addition to everything you face yourself, you must relate to and take care of employees' reactions and situations, and you still have to take care of business. This is a lot of pressure, and many of the leaders I have talked to say that they feel more lonely as leaders during Corona than they ever did before. So first, as a leader, you might need to adjust your own tasks while reboarding your employees, since this will take a lot of your time the coming months. And another valuable way to support leaders can be through a debriefing process. Debriefing is a psychological method that has been developed to create learning and relief in times of crisis or in light of a crisis. You might also find other ways to get support within your organization, and you should consider different ways to support well-being and preventing stress from building up. Now, we're almost about to finish this webinar. I have given you some perspectives on how to ensure well-being going into the next phase, and I hope it has been helpful. On this slide, you will find a brief summary to look at when you get access to the slides. But before we finish, there's one other thing we should keep in mind. We have been through a worldwide crisis, a pandemic, and it's going to change the way we live and work in the future. But a crisis also has great potential. We can learn and see new opportunities, and Corona is no exception. We will take many valuable insights with us. We have found new ways and learned new things in a very short time. And if nothing else, Corona has certainly boosted the digital transformation in every company and organization. Corona has given us a unique opportunity to rethink the way we live and work, and we must not let this go to waste. So as we approach a new everyday life, we must consider what to bring with us into the future. We can think of this as Noah's Ark. We have to look at what we need to take with us and what we must leave behind. We must take the best practices before and after Corona and unite them. But we need to remember the importance of compassion and healthy connections if we are to ensure both well-being and performance going forward. And finally, I just want to say this to you. When it feels a bit tough, it's because it is tough right now. Remember to meet both yourself and others with compassion, with care and wisdom. I wish you all the strength to persevere. Remember, we will get through this, and we will do it best if we do it together. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vibeke, for these inspirational and wise recommendations. We've had a few questions, and I will read a few of them here. So how long after the pandemic should we expect these patterns of reactions that you have been talking about?
That's a really, really good question. Let's just start by saying that people are basically very robust, and most of us will be able to adapt and get through this without getting sick and mentally having mental problems or our mental health being much affected. But we, of course, need to be aware of each other. If we look from the perspective of clinical psychology, we know that PTSD symptoms and reactions characterizing PTSD can show up for up to 6 months after the traumatic event. We know different sort of other reactions might actually show themselves for quite a long time after. So that is what we have to keep in mind also, because this crisis is not over. So I would say that now, just a guess here, that for at least this year, you would need to think to use resources on preventing this. But even then, we need to continue being mindful and aware that reactions, that stress reactions might have to do with this time that we have been through.
Okay, so this is not just for the next couple of weeks.
No.
That okay, and then as soon as we get everybody back into the office and people are there, then we will just continue as we used to do. This is something we need to be mindful of for probably maybe even the rest of the year, as you said. Okay, thank you very much. So what kind of emotion systems do people have during the pandemic? Is it the red system that people are constantly in?
No, we have all three systems, and they are differently affected. And people have increased activation. Many have an increased activation of the threat system. But again, we go in and out of this, and it can be very different depending on who we are. If you feel that your threat system is on high alert, is very active most of the time, you really need to seek support, to seek help, because we are not supposed to be in a high alert system for too long. So we are not only in the red system, as we have seen, people have been doing wonderful things during the pandemic, really. I mean, we have found great solutions. That's the blue system. We have also found ways to be together from a distance, been trying to accommodate the need for the green system to get online as well. But it is difficult. So there will be an imbalance that we have to take care of.
Okay, thank you. And as a leader, what happens to my team members who refuses to talk about it after many attempts of reaching out? Any advice on how to do it?
Well, actually, something that can help is that we sort of set the stage. It can feel much more safe to share experiences if other people share their experiences, especially if you do it as a leader. That being said, some people feel really uncomfortable talking about difficult emotions, and we have to respect that. And not force people in to talk about it. Not all people find it helpful to talk about their emotions in times of crisis. So it is a balance. And that's why I said, ask questions. There were some examples on the slide that makes it possible for most people to pitch in at a level where they feel comfortable and safe. Because we should never press people to talk about things that they are not prepared to talk about.
Okay, so we need to keep people within their comfort zone.
Exactly.
And that's perhaps even more important in a situation like this.
Definitely.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much. And the last question, is compassion the same as empathy?
No. It is not. That's the short answer. Compassion is not the same as empathy. Actually, empathy is the ability to sort of see things from others' perspective, to sort of put yourself in another person's shoes. It's a very important part of compassion, but it is not compassion, because I can use empathy to find out how I hurt you the most as well.
That sounds scary. Okay,
yes.
I think we will stick to compassion. And I thought also that on the slide you elaborated into all the different aspects of compassion. So that was very well. Thank you very much for your time and your inspirational seminar here. And thank you to all of you who have been listening out there. Have a great Friday and a wonderful weekend. And thank you for now.